How does life change when you move from your 30s to your 40s? What milestones do you have to accomplish then?
So a lot of times in your 40s, you're sort of hitting your stride with your career. For a lot of people, you are at the point where you're looking at promotions and raises, and maybe if you had children in your 30s, they're almost ready to go to college, and so you're looking at that, and you may have parents or relatives, older relatives who you might be faced having to take care of. So that's a big transitional period. We sort of think about 50s and 60s, but really the 40s is that decade where so much happens. That's the decade where people tend to have lifestyle creep, meaning that they start to live with every dollar that comes into their household. And the more they make, the more they spend. And next thing you know, there's not a lot left to do the things that will secure you in the later decades, like your 60s and 70s and 80s.
Hey everyone, I'm Jean Chatsky. Thanks so much for joining me today on Her Money. So today is the day. It's my day. I woke up and I found out that somehow I am 60 years old. I just don't even like the sound of that. While getting older is definitely not for the faint of heart, there's good things about it. And that's just not my opinion. Lately, we have been talking to some incredible women who have shown us that getting older, can we say it that way rather than getting old? Let's just say getting older. I prefer that. It's actually a life-affirming experience. I loved my conversation with Tamsen Fadal. If you didn't hear it, on reinventing your career in your 50s, also on all things menopause. She was amazing. Gwen Bounds took up Spartan Racing at age 47. Bonnie Hammer started a family in her 40s because that's just when it worked out for her. And these women are showing me that there is no timeline for accomplishing all of your dreams. So with that inspiration in mind, I thought it would be fun. I thought it would be interesting to talk about my money goals for my 60s. How are things going to change as I age? How are they going to change for you as you are similarly aging, getting older, not getting old? And the person that I wanted to talk to is Michelle Singletary. You know her. She has been here before. She is the author of a wonderful award-winning syndicated column that originates in the Washington Post. She's a personal finance rock star. She's also just hysterically funny. And she's got 2 years on me, which means that she's got just this slight little window into what's coming ahead. So, Michelle, first of all, thank you for doing this with me. I'm very, very grateful and looking forward to it.
Well, first of all, happy birthday.
Thank
And it's
you.
always a pleasure to talk to you. You're my shero. So,
Aw. So how was it for you turning 60?
can I say it sucked?
Yes, you can absolutely say it sucked.
It was transformational in the sense that your body does things that it never did before. It makes sounds that it never did before. So there's both the physical and even some of the mental. You go to a room, you just stop and you go, why was I coming in here? You know? And my kids get so nonplussed because I'll mix their names up trying to call one of them, and they'll look at me and I go, you know what your name is? If I don't get it right, you know what your name is, just answer. So it's all of that stuff. But I like what my husband said when I complain. He says, well, you know what? It beats the alternative. And so he helps keep me grounded in the fact that the other side of getting older, I guess, and then we decided that's how we're going to call
Yes.
it, is that you feel, at least I can say for myself, I feel more confident. I'm more able to say no when I want to say no. My no's are no's, my yeses are yeses. And there's a point in your life where you like, I don't have to take this crap. I'm not going to do this. I don't say that to me. And there's just a confidence that you have because you have less years ahead of you to waste. And so you don't do as many things, or maybe hopefully you don't do as many things that you don't want to do. And I love that. I love being self confident. You've got a whole career. The moments of doubt are fewer. I think, and it's just great. And my husband retired a year ago, and so having him around is really cool.
We're going to talk about that too. Because as you know, my husband is closer to retirement than me, and it's been a thing. It
Yeah.
has definitely been a bit of a thing, but I love that because I did feel when I turned 50 that I got braver, that I was able to start saying the things that I wanted to say without really censoring myself and wondering what other people were going to think about them all the time. And if you get more of that with 60, that's fantastic. Also, the no thing is really big. I am not particularly good at that, never have been. I say yes too often, but I'm gonna try to channel a little you and embrace that and make my
Yeah.
no's truly no's. Because sometimes even when I say no, I end up doing it anyway, and that just pisses me off.
I'm there too. I do it too. And I now have to continually talk to myself. And because of who you are, you get invited to places, people want you to speak, and you feel like you want to be there to help them, but you only have so much time. And I've just gotten much, much better at, and not just saying no, but making no a complete sentence. Because then I would say no, and then I would spend, if I'm writing a note, 3 or 4 graphs explaining my no. And then when you do that, it gives people an in because I'll say, no, I have too much to do this weekend. Then they go, well, what about next week? I just wanted to say no, period.
Yes.
And so now I go, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And that's it. I don't have to apologize. I don't have to qualify. I don't have to say I'm doing all this other stuff because you don't want people to feel bad, but I don't have to explain my no anymore. It's no. And you just take it. It's no is a complete sentence.
Last year, you published a really entertaining and informative series of money milestones for every decade. And there were a lot of really great specifics. I'd love to touch on a few of those before we focus in on those that we should be focusing in on our 60s. So if we've got folks who are listening in their 30s, what are the top couple of things that need to be on their list?
So I one of the things, Jane, we talked about this so many times. I hate debt. I hate debt so bad. If it was a person, I'd slap it. So I try to get them to, I think in your 30s, if you have a healthy hatred for debt, it will create an amazing amount of wealth for yourself. So develop that habit early. If you hate it, you will borrow less. You will pay more attention to how you borrow. So that's one thing. And then use time to your advantage. The one thing is you get older that you don't have this time. And so when you're younger, you save as quick as you can, as soon as you can, invest as soon as you can. Because you've got decades. I have 3 20-year-olds in my household, and we just like encouraging them to invest now, not just for retirement, but invest to pay for the things that you want in the future. Like our kids will probably never have a car note because we're teaching them how to save and invest. Two of them are still driving the cars they had in high school,
Amazing.
and they're almost in their late 20s. And so the next car they are saving for cash, and then they'll keep that for 15, 20 years. And so if you develop these habits early on, you can avoid a lot of the pitfalls that people have later when they wake up and realize they haven't saved enough for retirement or they haven't made really smart decisions. They have too much house, too much car.
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote a column about people being car poor, that an increasing number of Americans are trading in their car owing ten to $15,000. They're underwater, meaning that the car is not worth as much as the loan, and that just sets you up for
Yeah.
just continuing to be in that debt pit.
I was driving around Philadelphia with my younger brother earlier this week, and we were talking about his car because he has been driving it for a number of years. It's been paid off for a long time, but he said every month I just take $350 and I put it away, and it's for my next car. And that way, whenever this car dies, and hopefully it won't die for a while, but whenever it dies, they won't have to borrow. They just sort of treat it as an ongoing expense, and it works really well. Also, I just got to say, I don't understand why anybody ever buys a new car. Certified used, that works fine for me. How about people in their 40s? How does life change when you move from your 30s to your 40s? What milestones do you have to accomplish then?
So a lot of times in your 40s, you're sort of hitting your stride with your career. For a lot of people, you are at the point where you're looking at promotions and raises and maybe thinking, what's next? If you had children in your 30s, they're sort of setting almost ready to go to college. And so you're looking at that cost, and you may have parents or relatives, older relatives who you might be faced having to take care of. So that's a big transitional period. We sort of think about 50s and 60s, but really the 40s is that decade where so much happens. And so that's a tricky decade. That's the decade where people tend to have lifestyle creep,
Hmm.
meaning that they start to live with every dollar that comes into their household. And the more they make, the more they spend. And next thing you know, there's not a lot left to do the things that will secure you in the later decades, like your 60s and 70s and 80s. I have the most difficult time with people in their 40s because they want so much for themselves, the vacations and the houses and everything. And it's hard to say, oh, wait up. You got to pace yourself because you'll look up and you'll be in massive amounts of debt and not ready for that next turn that you're going to make. If you're thinking about a highway, you're getting off an off ramp, you're not going to be ready for that retirement off ramp. If you've been speeding ahead, getting, if you will, if I continue to announce, you're getting a lot of, speeding tickets, meaning debt and piling up and living above your means.
When you look at people in their 40s, I mean, to me, the most important thing is make sure that savings rate is up at 15%, right? That long term savings rate, make sure you hit it and you're hitting it consistently. Because I do think if you're doing that and you're not incurring debt, the rest will kind of take care of itself.
That's right. Exactly right. I mean, you should be living really on 70 or 80% if you can. Now, a lot of Americans can't, but there are a lot who can. And that is exactly right. If you hit that benchmark first before you add in all the other expenses, man, it's just smooth sailing from there.
Yeah. 50s is the year, well, 50s is the decade where I bought long term care insurance. I really got serious about paying off my mortgage because I always have wanted to go into retirement mortgage free. What are your 50-year-old milestones?
So that was what we did. We sent all three of our children to college debt free. So 50s was the time where we finished that up. Thank the Lord. And we really supercharged our retirement savings. At that point, we hadn't been maxing out. Now, maxing out meaning the annual limit that you could in your workplace plan because we were saving for college and we were getting them through. And so then the 50s were like, yeah, let's supercharge this. And also, we had the same goal. We are mortgage free, and we did that before my husband retired. That was our goal in our 50s, that neither one of us will retire with a mortgage, and we met that. And that meant just throwing massive amounts of money to get that off of our net worth statement, the liability that is. And that's what we focused on in our 50s, everything that we could, so that we wouldn't have the largest expense going into retirement, which is housing. Obviously, you still have to pay taxes and home insurance, but still that hefty payment. And we just been breathing a sigh of relief 2 years now without a mortgage. It's, oh my gosh, you just wake up just joyful. You just wake up, yes, I don't have that brick on my back.
There are people, other financial experts like you and me and journalists who do what we do, who would be listening to us and say, those women are crazy. You've got a low rate mortgage. You could take that money, you could invest it in the market, you could do significantly better dollar for dollar by not paying off that mortgage. Why make that decision? And I think I made it for similar emotional reasons that you did. I don't like debt. I don't want the feeling of knowing that this rock could be pulled out from under me. And perhaps that's because when I got divorced, I was the one that moved and I never wanted to have to do that again. How do you explain the decision?
So I love this question because I wrote a column about how we paid off our mortgage and we had a 2.75 mortgage rate. So right now, people, I tell you, people lost their everlasting mind. You would have thought I slapped somebody's baby. I mean, people could not fathom that I would give up what they call cheap debt and questioning my credibility as a financial writer to say that I was giving up cheap debt. But 2.75 of a large mortgage is still a lot of money. Like do the math. And so we did not just make that decision based on emotions. We looked at everything. And so what we decided was, okay, one, we didn't want to continue to pay interest that we didn't need to pay. That's a guaranteed return. So we had a guaranteed 2.75 return. That's one. And then secondly, we always pay attention to our cash flow. People forget that, right? Now, fortunately, we structured our mortgage so that one of us could afford it on pretty much our one salary. But even doing that means that we would crimp our cash flow, meaning that we wouldn't be able to take maybe the vacations that we wanted or help off other family members. My husband and I give a great amount of money to charity. We tithe 10% of our gross income. And so that would have impacted those things that are of value to us. So 2.75, even of a big mortgage, because we live in the Washington, D.C. area, is still a lot of money. We paid attention to the cash flow. So because we didn't have a mortgage, we haven't had a mortgage, my husband hasn't had to dip into, neither of us, into our retirement account. And the last year, the market has been great for our retirement account. So none of that money had to be pulled out. So that's one thing. He could live on his federal pension. We can live on my salary and still not change our lifestyle. And so that was the other thing. And then we are living what we preach in terms of not having debts. And finally, there was an emotional piece that I don't have to give a bank my money every month. And there is freedom. If anything happens, one of us gets sick or whatever, aside for the taxes and the home insurance, we have a permanent roof over our heads. We do not have to worry about somebody coming and foreclosing on our house. And that is a very tangible thing. Although there's an emotional part about it, it's very tangible. We created a house where people have come to live when they needed to recoup financially and emotionally. And so this is the place that everybody in my family lost their house, everybody can come live here. And there's plenty of room, and we have situated ourselves that way. And I think lastly, when we talk about what you can get in the market, that's over time, right? So any one year, the market can be down. And in 2021, end of 2021 to 22, it was like 20 to 30% if you were all in equities as we are. And that's another conversation because you don't want to invest the way we did. But we have 4 annuities between us, so we can be more aggressive in the market. But any one year, the market may not return those returns. And so we knew that. And we just said, okay, let's get rid of the biggest debt and an expense item on our budget and breathe. And so we looked at this both emotionally and financially and made the best decision for our family. And the other thing is people who say that, it's so interesting. I actually work with individuals. Oh, you put it in the market. Most of them actually don't do that.
Well,
right?
That's the thing.
And these are people who are, it's like, I like to watch football. And we're fussing at the quarterback. And why did he throw this way? You get out on that field and see if you can throw that ball. And so they'll say things like that. You can put it in the market. But we know most people who invest aren't investing correctly. They're either too risky or not risky enough. They're not putting enough in the market. They don't even know what's in their retirement account. So I just discount those fools because they don't actually work with anybody to know how people actually handle their money.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's human behavior. People say they're going to buy term insurance and invest the difference, and they never do. We're going to get to people in their 60s, specifically women in their 60s, in just a sec. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. We are back. I'm back with Michelle Singletary from the Washington Post. She writes the amazing Color of Money column. We're talking about money milestones in honor of my 60th birthday. So you get to your 60s and you think, okay, I don't have as much time left as I used to have, but I still might have an awful lot of time. I might have 30 years. I might have 40 years. What are the big boxes that we don't think about checking off during our 60s that we should be thinking about?
I will say the number one box, and this might surprise people because we're money ladies, is health. I'm embarrassed to say that I did not pay enough attention to my health, meaning that I didn't get enough sleep. I ran on empty all the time. To make everything work in a day, I'd be up at 2 or 3 in the morning and then get up at 6 or 7. In my 20s and 30s and 40s, I mean, I had 3 kids, bounced right back to the same weight. I mean, I just could eat anything I wanted. I was just like living a life. And then 50 and 60 years, it's like, what? Your body was like, girl, you're going to pay for all of that now. And so I am paying for it now. I have more health challenges because I didn't take advantage of my healthier self. I didn't pay attention to that. I didn't get enough sleep, too much stress, overworking, saying yes too much. And so now the number one concern is getting that back. So eating healthier, getting rest. And so now I haven't been completely successful, but I go to bed now. On my watch and my little phone, it's 11 o'clock. It say, you need to go to bed. And I talk to myself. It's like, time to go to bed. And so I think that's the number one thing. And that because if you're not healthy, you're going to end up spending more of your retirement money taking care of those health challenges.
Yeah.
And my husband and I want to travel and we want to climb mountains and swim the ocean. And we're not going to be able to do that if we don't take care of our bodies. And so both he and I are on this mission to just eat healthier, go to bed, cut out stress, get massages. And that's really what we're focused on for right now. That's the big thing because the money thing is good. We're good. We're good with the money. We're good with what it would probably take if we need long-term care. Where weren't good at, we're better now. It's our health.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I wrote a book years ago with a doctor, and we outlined the cost of chronic diseases, right?
Yeah.
People think that we spend so much money taking care of really, really old people in the last years of their life, and we do. But the amount of money that people spend taking care of diabetes and asthma and the other chronic diseases that we carry around with us for decades can really not be discounted. And a lot of those things are, if not avoidable, things that you can minimize if you take care of yourself. You said the money thing is good, which is fantastic. But I also know that your husband retired. You're not retired, which is very close to this scenario that I've got going on in my own house. I am not retired. My husband is working part-time and we're fine financially, but that's not the same as necessarily being on the same page financially. You wrote an article that I loved about your fear of running out of money in retirement now that he has retired when he is all too eager to spend. How's that going?
It's challenging. My husband is such a balanced individual, which is one of the reasons why I love him so much. And he says, I've spent, and it's true, the last 30, 40 years saving for this moment. And I'm going to spend. He's not a reckless spender. He's not a callous spender. He is smart about spending. And so he wants to do things. And I'm just like, no, we're going to run out of money. We're going to run out of money. And so it's very hard for me to spend because I've been in the saving mode for so long. And oftentimes in this financial space, we talk about how people will draw down their money. But what we don't talk about is the emotional impact of drawing down, even if whether it's 3% or 4% or 2%, whatever it is, it's just taking out when you're not putting so much in. And that is very stressful for me. We tend to have some intense fellowships because because I have alerts on my phone about everything, the bank accounts, the credit cards, everything. So he'll spend something. I'm like, what's this $50? And he's like, girl, I know you're not asking me about this $50 that I used to go play golf or get a shirt or whatever. And so that is a challenge. I am not going to lie. And so we have had to come up with rules to sort of govern that so that I don't drive him insane.
What kind of rules?
We have a weekly family meeting, just he and I, and we sort of go over what we're going to do for the week and the kind of expenditures that we're going to have. And that way I know ahead of time so that he'll go, well, I'm going to go golf this week. So we create like a spending plan for the week so that I'm not like surprised and he can say, I'm going to go get the car washed or I'm going to go get a massage or something to that extent. So we talk about it a lot so that I feel comfortable. And then one of the rules is that when I start to panic and go into my spiral, this is his phrase. He says, let's just look at the net worth statements.
Ah,
Everybody should use that term. Those of us who are not spenders, or those who want to spend what you save for, use that on the other person. That would be me. So he says, let's go to the network statement. And when he does that, we all almost half the time don't even have to go because I know what it's going to say. He says, look at that bottom number. And I can't go to the car wash.
it's so funny. It's like a football analogy, right? It's like an announcer from a football game saying, "Let's go to the videotape," right?
That's
It's
right.
it's like let's look at the real story. Let's look at the real information. Do you think that the fear of running out of money is a woman thing? I mean, I have it more than my husband has it.
I don't know if it's more of a woman thing as opposed to more of a how you grew up thing.
Mm,
And I think it might slightly tilt towards women because we tend to live longer. And so there is the more concern that we have to make our money stretch longer than the men because we outlive them. But I also think that a great deal of it has to do with how you were raised and the fears that you experience. Even though my grandmother was a great money manager, money was tight. And before I went to go live with her, it was pretty bad. I mean, we weren't being fed, there wasn't food in the house, and so I carry those memories. Even now, I mean, it's ridiculous because I'm nowhere near that now.
right.
I mean, when I was in college, I had a full scholarship, but there was no extra for me. I couldn't treat myself because I had to work even though I had a scholarship because my grandmother couldn't send me money. And so I still carry that. And so a lot of that fear is that I won't have, or I will be without, or maybe I'll be that little girl who remembers not having food. And so I have to continually battle that feeling. And it is a struggle still to
Yeah.
this day to let go of those memories. And because I'm in this space, I'm constantly meeting people who are struggling or who got divorced and it just ruined their finances. And I mean, I'm always in that space of hearing other people's troubled financial story, and I take that onto my spirit. And I'm like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be irresponsible. And so I have to be careful not to take on other people's trauma and drama onto my life. And that's real. It's hard.
It is hard. Our money stories are very powerful. I grew up comfortable. We were solidly middle class, but there were not a lot of extras either. And I remember I have this vivid memory of a trip that we took. My father was a college professor. We drove cross country during the summer and saw the national parks and things like that. But I remember we didn't go to McDonald's for lunch. We went to the grocery store. We bought a loaf of bread and a thing of bologna and made sandwiches, right? And
Yeah.
that was sort of the workaround. And we did everything that we wanted to do, but you hold on to these things from your childhood and they come back to you. You are still working. He is not working. How do you look at your future? How do you think about slowing down if you think about slowing down? How do you think about stopping if you think about stopping?
So we have a plan. I will have to say the great thing about our marriage is both my husband and I are planners. And so we had pretty much planned out everything, even though he retired a little sooner than we had planned because of some outside forces. So we adjusted that plan. And so the plan now is that I don't know how many more years I have, but it's going to be a little bit longer before I'm ready to retire. But we do have a window in which that is going to happen because we do both want to be retired at the same time. Now, our form of retirement is not working. If I use that double negative, sorry, all those grammarians out there, it's like those two young double negative. But so for example, he has a part-time job working with our church, but that's because they asked him. He wasn't trying to seek it out. He and I do a lot of volunteer work, and one of the things that we do is work in prisons to teach financial literacy. We volunteer in prisons. We go into the facilities, and so that is something that we also want to do. So we're going to plan to do that, and we're going to plan in travel. So now one of our plans is that we take a nice trip every quarter of the year.
Love that.
Yeah, right? So, because before, when you just had that one summer vacation, you just live for that 1, 2, or 1 week, and then you have to wait a whole nother year. And we're like, nah, we're not doing that. And so our plan is every quarter to take a trip someplace. And I can do that because I can readjust my schedule. I'm fortunate to be able to do that. So even though I'm working full time, I can build in that time to take those vacations. I don't have to be in a physical office and punch a clock. And so that's a plan. And then eventually the plan is that we'll be able to go whenever we want. If next week we go, let's go to Vegas, we'll be able to go. And so we are planning for that period. And it will be difficult for me to stop. I've been working for the Washington Post for 30 plus years. I like to tell people I look 29, but it will be hard for me to stop that. But I have so many other things that I'm doing in my life that it won't work itself won't stop. I do speaking engagements. We have a ministry at our church. We work in the prisons. And so the transition to that second sort of season of our life won't be as difficult because we have put in place things to keep ourselves occupied and put in place things that we can do together. And so the plan was never that we both retire at the same time. He has always said that he would probably be a little bit more ready than me. And then I'm going to follow shortly after him. And the major plan is to have complete control over our schedule. So we get to decide when we work or when we don't want to work. Right now, I don't have that. I have to produce a column every 2 weeks. And I do want to transition out of that so that I will be the master of my schedule completely.
Boy, oh boy, I knew that you were the right person to talk to today. I am taking this idea of quarterly vacations away with me, and it'll take us a little while to get there, but I think that sounds pretty amazing. Michelle, thank you for being such an open book and a good friend. I really appreciate it. And thank you, as always, for the amazing work that you do.
Well, thank you, and welcome to the 60s, girl. You're looking good. And I mean, the good thing about it is you just have a wonderful spirit. And just think of it as just a new adventure. And just always you giving out personal vibes. The thing that you do to help other people to help with their money is you just can take that. It's going to sound so cryptic to your grave because you have changed people's lives by your information. And in your 60s, you could be so proud of that. I mean, I'm a Christian, but it's sort of like when I meet my maker, whoever your maker may be, but when I meet my maker, I know that he's going to say, good, you good and faithful servant. And he will say that, whoever yours is, to you as well. Good and faithful servant over not just your own money, but helping other people with their money. And so for your 60th birthday, present to yourself, that's what you should say, that I spent my life journey, not just trying to make money for myself, but just trying to make sure that other people are secure. And that is the best birthday gift ever.
Thank you, my friend.